Hello, everyone. Welcome to
As we go live, Luigi's more like Jason Calacanis.
that's such a that's such
Andrew
an
is
insult. That's
Shamas,
such an
and
insult.
I'm the media guy in the background.
I see. You're the
None of us is David Sachs. You know what? The all
construction
in
besties. Construction besties. I like it.
that's right. Yeah, I'm more of I like free. I think Free Burke is is the gem of the group. But anyway, welcome to the Construction Technology Podcast. We are live. I'm here with my co-host Andrew from Join and Mike from Build Vision. We're very lucky to be joined by Dmitry from Handoff and One Build. Welcome, Dmitry. It's great to see you. What's going on? How are you?
That's awesome. No, I feel lucky to be here. I was just right before this, we were talking about how there are like so many people I either wanted to catch up with or, wanted to meet. So it's really cool to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, of course. It's awesome to have you here. And it feels like Andrew was joking beforehand that we should have some type of like pre-con group. It does feel now, I think we're on like our almost 30th episode. It does feel like there's like a very good group in pre-con. So it's great to be chatting with you here. So obviously the exciting news is that Handoff just launched H1, which sounds like it's like the first at least public facing full end-to-end estimating model. Would love for you just to give the quick story of Handoff and obviously One Build, from raising from Initialize and Gary Tan to Handoff to now H1. It's like a very exciting line of progress. So if you could just give us the overview, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, thanks so much. So, maybe just a bit of background on our company, right? So Handoff is a platform for helping you to manage your construction business with AI. We primarily focus on owners and smaller and growing construction businesses where they can use our agent to automate their entire back office from estimating, takeoff, project management, getting paid. And so what powers Handoff is our models that we've been working on for quite a while. And so one of the things that we're especially proud of is we released this model called H1, and H1 does autonomous takeoffs. You upload a blueprint, and then after a little bit of time, you get a full answer, right? So you don't have to click around, and there are products out there where you can do that a little bit faster, right, by clicking around on a set of plans. And I think those are fine. What we decided to do is like just the whole thing needs to be automated, like working with an estimator, because this is the feedback that we got from customers is something that they want. And we've been working this for a very long time now. We did YC back in winter 2020. Before that, I worked as the machine learning lead at a company called Adams. Happy to talk about that, which is kind of what led us to start this business. And then, yeah, we had a very long and very interesting journey through YC being basically the only construction tech company, I think, in our batch, to ultimately starting this company, to ultimately growing this company, and kind of going through COVID and figuring out, well, how do you create this, autonomous takeoff model?
Can I ask like just a couple clarifying questions? When you say small and growing contractors and you talk about owners, like, is there a particular vertical or like what is a small contractor to you? Is it residential home building? Is it commercial stuff? Is it TI?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have, and I would say we have two types of customers. So we have our kind of our core platform customers, which are home builders and remodelers. I would say doing, maybe let's call it $1 million in typical construction volume and up, right? So they're of a decent size. They have a handful of employees. They're a going concern business, but they just don't have the time or the labor to do estimating, right? For them, it's a massive pain point. And then so on another side of that, we have giant companies like some of the largest construction suppliers, for example, and other software platforms that are consumers of our API products. And so they take a model like H1, and then they already have a pre-existing, stack or ERP system that they have, but they want to plug that model into that ERP system. And so we work with them on these kind of larger, more custom enterprise contracts.
So one of the things you said was like, there's obviously other tools in the market that like kind of have like a screen or visual that like have you validate takeoffs. So if you're kind of doing that end to end, how are you managing the risk around that? And how are you managing like the false positives and the positive falses and all the different things you can kind of get together, pull out?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, right? I mean, when you're dealing with anything in pre-construction, it's like people's money is on the line, right? And you have to be damn sure that what you're offering them is something that they can, with confidence, show to their client and be able to bid off of that. And so, like the bar to meet this is very high, right? And that's why it took us such a long time to get to where we are. It just wasn't there. Like the quality wasn't there. Now, there's kind of the way that the product is built that enables this on one hand, and just the way that we make sure we do our own testing on the other. Maybe let me start with the latter one. So testing is something that is very important. If you're building any kind of AI product, we actually, over the course of the years, we train our model in thousands of blueprints, And we build our own benchmarks that show the accuracy of our product versus any other foundation model, let's say. And we actually made those benchmark open source. And so if you want to validate the accuracy of your, let's say, own project against those benchmarks, it's available. So
This is takeoff bench?
for the takeoff bench, yeah. So we set a very, very high bar for what we would put into production against those benchmarks that are quite hardcore. And we actually saw that the model performs better than human estimators. So this is just a quality bar piece that we wanted to reach before it actually becomes available to everyone. And on the other hand, the way that the product is built is the thing about pre-construction, and I think you guys would understand that, is pre-construction is also, there's a ground truth to it, like a takeoff has a ground truth to it, but it's also dependent on the way that you bid your jobs, the way you organize your jobs, the way that you price your jobs. And we give our customers power to, first of all, see the outputs, be able to then talk to the model to then customize those outputs, and to be able to provide any specific requirements. Like, well, you want to break out your estimates floor by floor, trade by trade, right? That is considered to be a portion of what accuracy means in construction, right? But this is a subjective piece of estimating that you still need to incorporate if you want to do a good job. Through the product, we give our customers the power to be able to do that as well.
So I guess to go one level layer deeper on that. Like, what if it is wrong? Are you guys taking on like the risk of being wrong, since it's not kind of want to say closed source, but end to end?
Yeah, I mean, like any provider of software, we provide the tools and the software that is needed to do a takeoff, right? We allow you to do it faster. We give you all the outputs so you can go and validate the outputs before you actually go and submit this as a bid. So it works in in the same way that your software works, right, Mike? And so I think it may be about the same approach.
Yeah, I guess I misunderstood. So I thought you said it was like a black box and you outputted the answers. So it is still like trust but verify. So it's like, here's the widgets on the takeoff the PDF or whatever.
Yeah, you get 3 outputs. You get a full markup. So all the files, all the markups of the files, you see them represented on the plan. You get a scope report, so it actually goes in detail about all of the things that are going into the project, like all the scope of the project and all the kind of specific details that we've been able to derive. And because we work with architects, and great, we all love architects, and sometimes they just don't do a good enough job on a set of plans, and that's okay. And we do try to capture those either errors, conflicts, assumptions, and we create a transparent list of everything else that we saw that might be a risk that the customer should be aware of, or any assumptions that we had to make, and so they can make a judgment based on those. And then the final piece is the estimate with the takeoff included. And all the pricing connects to our construction supplier partners. Like, we work closely with Lowe's, Home Depot, ABC Supply, and others. And so all the pricing can be traced back to their catalogs too. So if you wanted to see, well, why is this priced in such a in such a way, you can see exactly where it is in your favorite supplier's catalog.
It's amazing. We'd love to. Can we see it?
Yeah. I'd be happy to click around. Let me see. How do I share this?
There should be a button fifth from the left that says share.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So this is the Handoff platform. So it as a kind of an end-to-end construction management platform, it does multiple things. You can manage your contact book, your CRM, your construction schedules through this, do your invoicing. And this is kind of your pipeline, right? If you have a bunch of projects that are in the works. So this is a takeoff that we just did on a single family residential home. I wouldn't go into like all the details that you can do with the platform. So we can just go right into the takeoff here. But let me just kind of give you guys an idea. So this is an output, right? It shows all of the trades here. And then as you kind of expand this, you see the breakdown of all of the trades. And as I was mentioning, the prices, you can trace them back. Since we have Andrew here, let's look at joists. You can trace them back to the Home Depot, in this case, catalog. You can purchase actually through us as well. Now, when it comes to the takeoff, you guys can see, we uploaded the takeoff. We said, hey, very simple. Here's a plan. Go do the thing, right? Don't have to overthink it. And then it was a set of agents doing the work on this, using our computer vision models, using our data to put together this takeoff. And this is the steps that it went through. So like if, as the takeoff goes through the process, it took us about 1 hour and 15 minutes to do that. I would say a typical estimator would probably take, I don't know, a few days, right, to put together a full takeoff with an estimate. if that's all that they're focused on. And these are the outputs that you get. You get the estimator right here. You get the drawings and get a summary report. So let's just jump into the fun part and look at the drawings together. These are the drawings that you get from Handoff, and all of this was done automatically. There's actually no way, at least at this point, to draw anything in Handoff by hand. And so you can see it goes into such detail as deriving the ceiling joists and making sure that it's done against also the kind of the engineering constraints of a given project, right? Because the joists have to be placed against the kind of the walls that can reinforce them. And then it goes to all of the other details of all of the other scopes, like exterior siding, your doors and windows, your roofing, and then your electrical plan as well. And so everything is accounted for. If you guys want to see, we actually have this option to replay the stream of the model doing the work.
Let's do it.
So we can show you guys how that works. And this should go at 5x the speed. But so I'm not touching the computer right now. This is literally what the model does when it does the takeoffs. It goes through every plan like an estimator would do. It evaluates the details. It evaluates the callouts, the any tables, and then it starts to segment out the plan to what we call the ROIs, so regions of interest. And off of these regions of interest, it builds this sort of understanding of the job, right? And then maybe I can just jump a little bit ahead. And again, this is what an estimator would do, and this is why it's such a tough problem. You cannot just do a takeoff like it's not just a bunch of drawings. It's really the understanding of the entire project context. And so it starts by kind of measuring, creating these different details. Often enough, they kind of look like nonsense because the model doesn't work the same way as human does. But as it goes through that, it starts to clean it up and it starts to kind of like populate it one piece by piece, right? And evaluating its own work and doing its own, counting, and it's doing its own quantities. So let me see if I can show you like a cool visual where it just like populates things. Let's see. Maybe let's just do it at a page scale as well, so it doesn't jump around so much. So you can see over here, the model just goes through and it just populates those areas, and it just adds the takeoffs, adds the markups as it goes along. From these markups, it then derives the quantities. And there's multiple really difficult problems we had to solve in order to do that, right? It's like, well, like how do you accurately like distinguish between interior and exterior walls? Left handle door versus right handle door, different types of windows. Sometimes the plans don't have everything that you need, right? Sometimes sometimes you might just have a floor plan and like you have to work with that and you have to make assumptions about roofing. You have to make assumptions about all the other trades. Over here is kind of cool. You can see it's drawing the joists. I thought that's like really neat. You can clearly really
cool.
see how it's happening in real time.
Can I ask a very specific question? Typical details. Typical details, not always scope. Scope if the plan context required. How does the model specifically choose to implement, let's say what would potentially impact quantities if a typical detail is relevant?
Yeah, I mean, look, so it does. So different plans have different level of detail that is available. So this is like a 12-page plan, give or take, right? So, where the details are available, this is what it's using, right? It can actually look at the details provided by the architect or by an engineer, and then what's in the detail will be referenced and then used to then make the estimate and the takeoff. Now, when it is not available, we've built a massive, called a knowledge base of construction principles. We started the company essentially doing estimates and takeoffs for people by hand. And over the course of that initial period, we worked with hundreds of estimators. And with them, we've been able to obtain all of this very detailed construction knowledge of how to actually build something. And so when a model is trying to reference this sort of like library of construction knowledge, when it doesn't have all the details available in the plans, this is where it goes to be able to then get those answers.
Yeah, very, very, very magical. So let's talk about performance relative to benchmark. So you have Takeoff Bench, which Handoff introduced. what are you actually reporting on relative to takeoff bench? Is it mean average percentage error for the objects that are being drawn? Or does it depend on the task?
Yeah. So what the takeoff bench does, it analyzes performance on a set of specific trades using the accuracy of what a perfect human estimate would look like in terms of quantities, in terms of, let's say, units of measure and scope completeness. And so we then score the outputs against those trades. And then you're able to then quickly, we use this evaluation harness called Harbor, and you can quickly plug in a model within that evaluation harness against those scores on the set of permission blueprints that we've derived from our platform. And then you can see how your model performs against what a perfect estimate would look like. And what I mean by perfect is when we did that in the beginning with just human estimators, we actually found that human estimators, even the ones that are quite experienced, there were a lot of imperfections. And so then we had to go through multiple rounds of revisions to really get it to like, okay, absolutely nothing is missed to be able to set that bar. And then we were able to compare their kind of like the best possible early submission against the final submission where all of the revisions were actually accommodated.
So is this primarily residential, or do you do commercial scopes as well?
Yeah, we started mainly in residential. And so I think where it excels the most is remodel, single family residential. But at this point, we also do commercial. So some of the other types of projects we do cover quite well are retail, whether that's new construction or TI, and then multifamily. I would say where we do still, have not explored so far is, larger projects, maybe more civil projects for sure. But kind of the bread and butter of the majority of construction here in the US, the model covers pretty well.
Mm.
Okay,
In-
and then
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to
I'll
ask, like,
I'll
what
ask after.
happens to I'm a $1 million a year, $2 million a year, like resi builder or remodeler. What happens to my business if I particularly adopt the estimating piece? Do I estimate more? Do I estimate better? Do I get to like not build shopping lists and have to go to Home Depot? I just get to hit buy and then all the parts show up on site? Like, what happened? Like, why is my life better?
Yeah, fantastic question, right? So let's just maybe take a step back and kind of thinking through what a typical, life of somebody who runs a construction business like that looks like, right? So because, they may be running a business that doesn't have a ton of staff, they have to do a lot of the work themselves, right? And so that's being on the job side, actually managing the projects or managing your team that is growing, doing recruiting. So like, we're all founders here, right? So these folks are also founders in their own way. And so wearing a lot of hats. Now, how do you make money in construction? It's through bidding, right? Primarily, right? You have to bid and we have to win those bids in order to actually bring in the cash flow. And so I would say there's two things that kind of are a benefit to using AI to doing your estimating. And, applies to anything, whether that is through Handoff or not. One is you can do more work, like you can actually cover more bids because you may have more opportunities to bid than you currently can physically accommodate, respond to. Now all of a sudden that expands. And then the second is the quality of your bids is better, right? Because now you're trying to grow, you're trying to bid more. Every single bid, it is again, like it is how you make money. The profitability matters. But the more you try to do yourself by hand, the less accurate you're going to be because again, simply not enough time. And so you kind of get back both, the higher accuracy, higher profitability, and more revenue on top.
My impression, I don't know very much about the home building space. We briefly considered doing a renovation and then got estimates back. And that was that, right? Like, but the estimate, we went through this process, like it was like 100-year-old house with like some real geotechnical issues. Like, so it may not be typical. But my impression was there wasn't a lot of accuracy in the estimates that were being brought back to me. So like, and I don't even know if we were like, there was just like a huge, this was a substantial renovation. There was just a huge amount that was unknown, right? Like we had a drawing set, but even then, like no one had taken the walls open. Like we didn't actually know what was going to be under the soil. Like how much does the accuracy matter in the resident? Like why does it matter that I've got like a more accurate, a more precise estimate in the residential space?
You mean matter for you as the client of the contractor or matter for the contractor?
For the contractor. Obviously, I want complete price certainty and I want fewer digits on the price.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because it's a project-based business, so it's all about the inputs into your project, right? And so, and then typical, construction firm tries to hit and there's a whole like argument of, markup versus margin. But a typical construction firm is trying to do 30% markup, right? Let's say, right, and they forget to include all the other expenses that they need to incur, to actually make their margin. But so like if you don't estimate correctly in the beginning, let's say lumber prices went up, right? And you just didn't incorporate that because you're referring to lumber prices from like a year ago. And so if you don't do that, then your markup shrinks, right? And as a result, your margin shrinks. Now, what you're referring to also is like the on-site conditions. And when a contractor does an estimate, usually in their contract, they say the estimate is based on like the best understanding of the job that I have today, right? And so, but what often happens, especially with remodels, you probably open the wall and you find out that like, I don't know, like your plumbing is from the 1950s. Like we have to redo that too. And so in those scenarios, usually the contractor would do a change order to then accommodate those things that they just did not know at the time. And then the good news is that you can actually do the change orders through Handoff as well.
Yeah, I just want one level deeper on that as well. Like, and again, I'm not from the Resi space, but like for the example of like joists, like you kind of know the spacing that's needed in a joist offhand. I'm sure the estimators at a home builder would know that, and they know the square footage of the space. Isn't it kind of just a simple calculation to go, hey, it's a 3,000 square foot first floor, 3,000 square foot times whatever the calculation is to get the linear feet of joist that I need? Does it actually need like this detailed of a takeoff for them? Because like I'm guessing not every home has like really detailed drawings, like what like that. There seems to have to be some sort of balance between those two.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, definitely. Great question. I think there's multiple layers or multiple types of estimates, right? That you might do as a contractor based on the type of work you do, and also like the price of the project. When you are, let's say, a remodeler and you're doing like a 20K bathroom remodel, so first the complexity of that project is lower, right? So you're actually not gonna most likely have any joists there, but like you still want to quantify things like amount of tile or fixtures that you're going to install. And so in that scenario, just that's just like a simpler estimate. And for the most part, it doesn't even need a blueprint. Like you can, go on site, take some measurements, take some photos, upload them into Handoff, describe the project, and you can be done, to a high degree of accuracy. Now, as you go up, then the next question you have to ask yourself is, are you, let's say you're doing a single family home ground up. Now you have to ask yourself, are you going to be taking on any of that scope yourself, right? Are you self-performing or you're subcontracting, right? And if you're subcontracting, here again, like you can actually even start at like, design development phase with like a pretty simple set of drawings where you don't need to quantify every single joist, every single stud, right? Every single door handle. It is going to be good enough for you to kind of go with like a more high level estimate. Then now you can sub out to other trades that would then perform the work. And then the most detailed, the most hardcore is you're a framer, and actually you're going to go and frame that house. And this is where, yeah, 100%, you actually do have to quantify them. Or you're a roofer, right? You have to quantify everything. It has to be detailed. Basically, any trade contractor, right? They will need to have that in-depth level of detail. This is where drawings come in, and this is where detailed takeoffs come in. And so we can scale across all three possible scenarios that you may find yourself in. And this is the reason why not only the model works really well for the contractors that are using the product, we actually offered the model to suppliers. And for suppliers, the accuracy just has to be like really on the dot because they're actually going to sell the specific items to the contractor, right? So the suppliers who use our model, they actually use that to quote the actual, number of studs, number of joists that it will have to be selling to the contractor ultimately.
Who takes the risk then? Like if the supplier, I don't know if ABC is an example customer of yours that does this, but if I'm ABC Supply, I work with a bunch of home builders, I offer this value add service that I say like, yeah, throw the plans over, I'll put together what you're going to need, you buy it, you take it on site, you deliver it. Like if there's a miss there, who owns it?
Yeah, well, hopefully everybody does a good job, right, in that process, right? Both, with if it's Handoff providing the takeoff, right, and the associate quoting the job, and then maybe the contractor taking a look over the quote. But in an event that all three miss it, it's really the exact same process if you would have a human estimator, right? Let's say you come in, with a set of plans, and let's say Some suppliers outsource that to remote locations, right, where the takeoff is done on their behalf. They get the takeoff back, let's say somewhere in Southeast Asia, right, and then they get the takeoff, they give it to the client. So I would say that the 80% of the time, this is how actually it's done today in the lumber and building material industry. If there are God forbid issues and errors, usually there's a return process, right, where you can then, let's say, hey, you gave me too much, too many studs here, like, you need to go pick it up. And so it's a fairly common process in the industry
It
where
does seem like you're probably always going to be over rather than under if the supplier like does the estimate, right? Like you're probably not going to show up to the site without things.
I mean, yeah, and ideally you got the right measurements too, right? So you don't have to cut it again. So yeah, but I would say kind of like the returns, delivery and returns process is a part of kind of today's world and lumber and lumber and building materials industry. But again, like this is where I think we all of us, right, in construction tech can create value is just grinding down all of the situations where the errors do arise and improving our products and improving our models. Because ultimately, like if you do ship your takeoffs off to remote takeoff service, there's only so much you can do to improve it there. Like it really just going to depend on how well the person running that specific location is going to be able to accommodate it. And I think that's really cool about what we do here is that we get to control and learn and constantly iterate. And ultimately, I think this is why we can provide us kind of like as a construction tech, I would say a space overall, provide ultimately a much better service than anybody else would.
We see like a similar, well, the implication of your question, at least in how people use our product, where like we're not perfect. So you're called a checklist. At least our products are different. Like we do scoping, but not the quantity takeoffs. Quantity takeoffs they're just very, very hard in commercial projects. But I guess it's a two-part question. One, how are people using it? Do they use it as a check on their existing work? And then two, let's say they're saying, okay, I'm actually using this to be my estimator, which does make sense because if you trust your estimator and they do a good job, you are not auditing their work. You're simply taking it at face value and say, okay, Dmitry does a great job. So yeah, it's probably within 5% accuracy. I can live with that. I'm going to move on. But let's say it's working very well and people are replacing it. Is estimating solved, right? Or are there specific edge cases that still need additional data? Or, some kind of novel approach, like where's the challenge? Because like electrical and sprinkler, that's hard. That's not on the drawings. That requires an understanding of how conduits are run, and fire sprinklers just show you the location, but not the pipe run. So very long question, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's a perfect question. I think that estimating has two components. It always has a ground truth component and it has a judgment component, right? And every bid, like every estimate is ultimately becoming a bid, right? And every bid has a component of like, what do we want to do here? Do we want to win this job, right? And maybe bid less? Do we want to, just we don't like this client, we'll bid as much as, as high as possible, hoping that they, reject it. And so I think from the standpoint of like, what is ground truth? Like that is, I would say it depends on what solved means, but I would say that is largely solved because if you do provide information into the model, right, the model will then make very good decisions with that information. So if you have a blueprint, that's a lot of data that you can base your takeoff from, you can base your estimate from. And so the kind of the ground truth component, the ground truth accuracy is going to be there. You can also provide a description of the project, right? And then in that case, it really just depends on how good your description is, right? And the same thing, I'll come to you and you're my estimator, right? And I'll tell you, hey, I'm going to do this 100 square foot bathroom remodel. And then you'll be like, all right, is there anything else I should know? Right? So I think there's like a lot of detail that needs to come into that. You can be a perfect estimator, but whatever you give me is just going to be based on the amount of detail that I provide you with, right? And so like the takeoff is a good one because there's as much detail as you can derive. So I would say it's solved from that standpoint. Ultimately, I think every human, every owner of a construction company, even every estimator who's using this, they need to add their own spin on the output in the same way that, let's say you go to Claude and you say, hey, Claude, write me an email. You probably will, at the end of the day, the email will be correct. It'll be sendable. You can send it exactly as it is, but usually you'd want to, kind of tweak the last mile of what that's going to look like.
So if you were to aim each one at a commercial set, I know you said you started dabbling. Would your benchmark that you built, the takeoff bench, does it encapsulate every discipline, depending on which CSI you're using, divisions 1 through 16, if it's older, or up to 40 something if it's newer, does it do all that very well? Or are there some divisions where it just doesn't work yet?
Yeah, great point. So, and just to clarify, the takeoff bench one, so this is the first version of the benchmark, right now contains only residential projects. We have not added the commercial projects in the publicly available benchmark. Our internal benchmark does include commercial projects, and we'll be working on takeoff bench 2 to then include the commercial as well, make those publicly available. Now, as far as the CSI, like let's say go trade by trade, I need to understand why, but for whatever reason, we actually beat. Essentially, we were the best in class on every trade except for insulation. Why insulation? I do not know. I actually need to. We're trying to investigate and understand a little bit better. But other than insulation, like we're pretty. I think we're pretty locked in.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was insulation was, and when
remarkable.
I say insulation, it was only like a couple of percentage points off. But we're like, okay, I guess we haven't spent enough time on insulation yet, so we'll have to, we have to delve on that a little bit more.
Yeah, change the temperature from 0 to 1, and then maybe it'll.
Yeah.
There's this like really, I feel like, very annoying discourse in construction tech about, it's like pretty protectionist about, oh, you have to be from the industry. Mike asked this question in the chat. What's your view? I mean, obviously we can infer what your view is, but why do you think it's not relevant? Or maybe we just don't understand your background, and you can inform us as to how you came from the industry.
It is a question that actually I would, I'm definitely happy to give my take on it. It'd be interesting to hear your take, because once you've been doing it for like
Yeah, the year of your life, Mike, that you spent drilling micro piles in the Eagle Stadium.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
It's only relevant to the extent like you're not successful as a result of that. Like if you can't talk to a customer because you don't, know the language, then yeah, maybe it does matter.
But the construction industry, I don't know. I came from the outside, right? My experience is that the construction industry is a collection of loosely related industries, and that you have to learn how to speak to a great diversity of audiences to navigate most problems of scale in the industry. Right?
Yeah, I think I agree. I just think like the way we talk to investors sometimes bleeds over into how you market your company, and you feel like there needs to be some like fatalism. Like if you didn't swing a hammer at 12, then there's no way you could build a global VC backable construction tech business. It doesn't really matter. But I agree. Like if you're working in the industry for 7 years from tech or on site, like you are from the industry. If you show up day one and expect it to be a 40 million ARR, yeah, it probably matters, but you're not there.
I mean,
Bob Yard. They don't get the recognition. Don't you find that interesting? Like the people who talk about the best tools, like Bob Yard's rarely mentioned, but it's hard to infer, but they seem like the fastest growing. And Michael's team is quite cracked. Quite cracked. Yeah, for commercial.
I think that it's a blessing and a curse for what we do. All of us here, is that construction is not an intuitive place. It has a lot of things where you're like, well, that is weird. Like, why is that? Right. And you kind of have to be very curious, and you have to sort of play ball with how people do things. And you have to come into this with a lot of respect. And I think it takes time to get there. And I think if, let's say we were starting, like I'm a machine learning guy, like I can do like a dev tools company, right? If I did that, like, I probably would have, like, you'd know answers much sooner. You can relate to the people that you work with much quicker. And the error rate is the lowest. And I think in the world of startups, venture-backed startups, you live and die by your error rate because that is what correlates to your traction and your runway. And if your error rate is higher than what your runway allows you, right, to sort of afford, then you go out of business and then you become, the story that everybody would be like, well, with Katera, like nobody was from construction. They like, I mean, we can probably,
That probably
discuss
wasn't
Katera.
the only problem there.
Yeah, probably a bit bigger, right? But it's like you have to. And if you're like a founder listening to this podcast right now, construction tech is amazing. I love people who like. I love contractors. Like I love hanging out with contractors. But you're gonna be like the dumbest person like ever for the first probably, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, right? Until you go through all of the stupid mistakes you're gonna make because your assumptions coming from tech do not correlate well to the assumptions of people or to the way that things are done of people that are in one of these pockets of construction, right? And if you go, like we sell into contractors and we sell into suppliers, there is some overlap. I mean, sure, like there's similarities, but very, very different go to market motions, very different needs, very different requirements. Even within the suppliers, like different suppliers are like a big box supplier versus like a hardcore, like, local LBM supplier. And so you just have to accept that you're going to be an idiot for a long time. But if you're okay with that and you can like survive and convince your investors that eventually you learn, it's probably a good place to be. Yeah, totally. I mean, what we do here is not too dissimilar from, let's say, a company like Toast, right? Toast that sells into restaurants that are like of, small to mid-sized type locations. And, the nice thing about the SMB market is there's a couple of things that are nice and there's a couple of things that are not nice. So just starting with the things that are nice is there's a lot of them, right? I think within our target market, there's maybe 800,000 firms, right? So we have plenty of room to grow. And like, I think with, maybe if we capture even, let's say 80,000 of those, like would be at a company of an IPO scale, right? So there's a lot of room to grow. And then when you sell to SMBs, if you position your product well, you can be not just like a point solution, but you can be their own, their full OS, right? You can run their whole thing for them, which I think is much harder if you go into commercial construction where there is more complexity. Procore obviously succeeded at covering the whole thing end to end, but I think it's a lot of people already have Procore, right? So like, well, you have to go and compete with that. But being their OS, being their end-to-end solution, that really is where you can monetize a lot better and you can have a higher share of wallet, better retention, is easier in SMB for those reasons. Sales cycles are shorter. The decision maker is on the phone, when you call them. It's easy to find them. They're local businesses. A lot of really good stuff, right? What things that are a little bit more complicated is like you may call them and they may be on the roof, like and they have to make a purchasing decision from there. There was a guy I was talking to, and it was wild. Like we were doing a demo. He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to take the call from the truck, no problem, right?" So a lot of time people take actually their calls from the truck. Guy comes in, his face is white, completely white. He's covered in paint. Literally, the guy just painted a house, and I was like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, we don't have to. Like, maybe he's like, no, no, no. This is my every day of my life is like this.
Yeah.
So you sell into people's like, yeah, you sell into customers that are in these, and I would say often like in challenging positions. And so it is a different sales process, and you have to change your mind about how you sell into SMB. And it's about velocity. It's about clarity in your value proposition. Brand really matters. You have to be super product led. The product has to be intuitive. It's a hardcore task to be able to reach that market. But if you do reach that market, I think it's a really awesome market to be able to sell to.
I mean, I assume Toast handles all the financial payments, and so I'm guessing they have factoring products on top of that, and they start to very meaningfully impact the business they interact with. Is that where Handoff goes, becomes sort of the back office in a box that brings all these value added services to home builders and to smaller contractors, or
Yeah, that's exactly what we are, right? So we are an agent that helps you run your business with, say, AI teammate, and you can delegate work across the entire back office. And so you kind of get both a worker, your AI agent, and the tool that the worker can use. So as a part of Handoff platform, you have budgeting features, scheduling features, project management features that are tightly connected to the agent, right? So it's an entire back office that runs the firm, the company for you, and payments is definitely one of those elements. We actually have best in class payments rails that we build, fastest payouts, lowest fees, and then the contractors love using it because they can accept payments digitally through us, whether that's through ACH or through credit card, and so then connects back to their bank account. And there's a variety of other fintech products we plan on launching in the next future, in your future. But it's payments is definitely like a Toast or other kind of companies in the vertical workflow space is typically where you go to.
And so why do both suppliers and small contractors, like why work with those two very different audiences where it sounds like a huge part of building, like there's obviously some very exciting technology that's been built. We saw a demo of it, and I'm sure there's more as well, but a huge piece of building that business and bringing the technology to market is the distribution and the support for the builders. Like, why take on a very different set of problems, I imagine, around big box suppliers?
Question. Yeah, I think there's two parts of it. Is like one is by choice and one is not by choice. I would say the part that is by choice is that we believe that if you solve these problems like cost estimating and takeoff, you actually solve the fundamental problems of how to automate construction, because a takeoff is basically what it is. It's a cheat code into the rest of the project. Like you can quantify all of the materials you need to buy. You can quantify the labor you're going to need. You can quantify the time it's going to take to complete. You can connect that to your purchasing, connect that to your team management, right? So if you solve that piece really well and you automate it, you kind of earn your way into becoming a bit of an infrastructure layer for the rest of the project, the company, and ultimately, because construction is very interconnected, right? And if a GC works with a sub or GC works with a supplier, often enough is the same piece of data that gets sort of transferred from one sort of pocket to another, and you can unify everybody in one single data standard, right? So you can become that infrastructure product, infrastructure rails. And so we decided to sell into this specific segment of general contractors because we feel like it's the best place to start if you want to build something like that. And now suppliers is always something that we wanted to do. It was always a part of our vision, and we started working with them in a different capacity in terms of like bringing their pricing into our platform. But then some of them started coming to us and were like, hey, like you guys seem to be doing well in these like, quoting and takeoff things. Can you do it for us? And, we were just very lucky because they basically gave us an opportunity to work with them. And there's one big name that has us implemented in almost 2,000 of stores across the country. And so when as a founder, when you have an opportunity like that, it's hard to say no. We probably we wouldn't be seeking that out, out of our own accord at this point in our company stage, just because we kind of had an opportunity to work with suppliers that became another market that we ended up tapping into.
That's awesome.
Dmitry, so on one hand, I'm surprised that the market pulled this out of you. Maybe not on the supplier side, but on the residential contractor side, because it feels like it's the minority of cases where they have a full set of plans to actually take off. It's usually like, here's what I think, take some photos, take some measurements, do that. So maybe you already answered that question, but how did you land here on takeoffs on these drawings? It seems like more like a commercial construction thing. And you mentioned that you're going there.
I feel like our commercial construction customers would say that it's a minority of the times that they have a full and complete set of drawings to do takeoffs from.
But you think the proportion of
no, I don't think
drawings
the
to no
proportion.
drawings?
I think it's got to be more acute.
Right.
But Dmitry would know better than I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
by the way,
let me comment. Yeah, go ahead.
But if you guys ever want to integrate H1 into your platforms that are serving commercial construction, we would be very much happy to do so. And so you guys can kind of enable those capabilities there. Just putting it out there. As far as kind of like why takeoff, it really depends on the market segment. Home builders, they operate exclusively off of blueprints, right? It's very, very common. So if you sell into home builders, custom home builders, you will have an architect that has designed a home, and then you have to build off of those plans. Now, and this would still within kind of like the same residential construction segment. Often enough, you have remodelers that are trying to break into new home construction or commercial TI, for example, that often comes with plants as well. So the demand in our market is definitely there. Now, but when it comes to building an estimate, there's sort of three components to it. There's the quantities, there's the scope, and there's the pricing, right? And so we actually started with Takeoff back in 2019. Little history on me. I was working in this company called Adams. It's Travis Kalanick's company that used to be mainly cloud kitchen space, like dark kitchen space. Now it does all kinds of things. And I was trying to figure out how do we use machine learning to automate the process of real estate development of these kitchens. And so this is where I learned about Takeoff. And so I was like, well, this is sounds like a perfect problem for machine learning to solve. And so we started working on Takeoff at the time, but we discovered that actually it wasn't the right first problem to solve. And so what we focused on instead was pricing and scopes. And so the first version of Handoff platform that we launched did not have takeoff, and you can do all of your estimating through descriptions, photos, and so all the non-takeoff, like non-blueprint related types of inputs. Once we felt that the model was perfected enough, this is when we enabled takeoff. And so for our home builder customers, like I mentioned, our customers that cross over into commercial construction, that has been like a really, really nice addition that they've been using.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I was going to ask you a second question. Do you guys have anything else you want to ask while I try to remember where I was going? Mike, you're on mute.
Yeah, the word model is a bit of a nebulous term, right? Because it can mean a lot of different things, right? I think models traditionally means is just something that is a combination of components, right? It can be like a combination of weights, right? It can be like something that's simple. It can be something that has like a bunch of different layers to it. Like most basic regression model is just like a formula, right, with a couple of variables, or you can have something that's incredibly complicated. So in our case, where we shine, I would say, is we've trained our own computer vision models, and that has been done on like thousands and thousands of blueprints with hundreds of estimators that worked with us. And so those computer vision models that are forming the basis of the accuracy, right? On top of those, we actually use agents, and those are the agents that we rely on foundation models and the AI labs to offer access to those agents. But those agents operate within our harness and within the knowledge bases that we've created, and they have a certain workflow that they go through in order to accommodate the work. So there's a combination of different pieces to this that allows us to do what we do essentially. But the core, the models themselves, the LLMs themselves, or even with vision capability, they're very weak when it comes to working with blueprints. So, but they're strong in other ways, like understanding context or using tools, for example. That'd be so funny. Actually, I have an announcement. H1 has been banned by the U.S. government. It's
Yeah. Dmitry, I am so look, my dad's a general contractor and he doesn't do custom builds, but he did a lot of work for clients. This was the question I was going to ask. Are you also doing conceptual stuff? So homeowner says, here's a picture of my bathroom. Here are the finishes I want. I don't have a design. Can you give me a range? How well does H1 do on that? I know you probably don't have a benchmark, but what's like the vibe on how that performs?
Yeah, H1 is a model that is specific to takeoffs, and that's the one that we've launched this week. But for the pretty much the entire kind of time that Handoff was live, we would operate more of these, like you described, maybe conceptual or description based prompts. And so, actually, a lot of consumers use Handoff. And so, if you guys ever do a remodel and you want to double check, actually, one of our investors, she's doing a remodel and she checked it against Handoff, and she was like getting ripped off, and she brought it back with her contractor. So we helped her save a little bit of money there. But no, this is actually I would say where we started, and we spent a lot of our time at the beginning, just based on photos, descriptions, videos. You can do that as well, guys. I might have time for one more question.
No, that's it. We're
We gotta
gonna
wrap.
wrap. I just wanted to say, very impressive. I was texting the guys in the group. This is such a magical product, and I'm super amped to hear how the industry reacts to this. If you could maybe tell us very quickly how they are reacting. But this is definitely the future. So congratulations on H1. We're very amped for you. We're obviously in your corner, cheering you on, but this is going to be fantastic for the industry.
No, likewise, guys. I mean, it's such an honor, truly, like to be able to talk to you about it, because I think that in construction tech, there's always like a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of like, like, oh, is this just like another hype thing or something like that, right? So we wanted to be as transparent as and open as possible. That's why we're publishing a paper. That's why we have a benchmark. That's why the product is available for use. That's it's a real thing that we've been working for a very, very long time, and the fact that to hear from you guys being experts in construction tech, it really means a lot.
Amazing. Congratulations again, and best of luck with the implementation and rollout. Mike, you're on mute if you want to say something. I mean, experts is a
Three
stretch for
dipshits
sure.
here. Yeah.
Maybe except for
Wait,
except
they're
for Andrew.
experts? Where do we talk to them?
All right, everyone, we're
Construction
signing
tech,
off.
not construction.
Right.
Nah.
That's right. All right, everyone. Thanks so much, Dmitry. Thank you, Andrew, and I got to jump. We'll talk soon. See you guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.